Welcome to the Stochastic MLB DFS Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Adam Scherer. You can find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And this show is sponsored by SoRare MLB, which is a digital trading card and NFT-based free-to-play MLB game. We'll talk about SoRare a little bit more later on. While you're coming in, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Adam, how did NBA go for you yesterday?
Not great. Lost a little bit. Nothing too bad, but yeah, didn't win. So pretty much automatically means you're going to lose.
That is true, especially on these showdown slates. Humboldt says still recovering from my Gabe Vincent debacle last night. Yeah, I only made 2 lineups. I just hand built them just because I wanted to have it to be able to track it essentially. And I put Gabe Vincent in the captain in the first one. And he was at halftime had negative 1.5 points. I think he was just that was not the right decision playing Gabe Vincent yesterday.
Yeah, I was under the field on him, which was nice, but
yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah. All I know is that the guy who for 2 NBA shows in a row has just been in chat saying how I suck because I don't watch basketball or whatever. He said he was playing, which I do. I don't even know where he got the idea that I don't. But beyond that, I suck because I don't watch the games. He was playing 100% Highsmith at captain, so I know I did better than him.
Is he in this chat right now?
Not that I know.
Okay. That's really funny. Yeah, chat can get wild sometimes.
As usual, I asked him to put some money up, and then he stopped talking.
Yeah, go figure. That's going to happen. You going to play some UFC today?
Yeah, I think I'm playing 3 max single entry stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I think I will too. I haven't looked at the slate at all, but looks like it's
11 fights.
Bigger one. All right, 11 fights, probably worth playing. Maybe I'll play a little bit of UFC as well. And of course, going to be playing this MLB slate. This is nice having the strategy show. In general, I hate the doing it an hour earlier on Saturdays, but we're actually going to have a little buffer time. So I can actually do the sims right today instead of trying to run the simulator while I'm on a show. Just brutal every day.
That's half the reason I insist on doing it an hour earlier, Neil.
Yeah, I guess I appreciate it now. Normally I'm like, come on, Adam, don't make me wake up early. But I guess it is kind of nice to have a chance to actually get good lineups in instead of just trying to do them on the fly at last minute.
Yeah, it's twofold for me. One, Saturdays are tough to do. They're very hard, I think, to make lineups on a show because a lot of times, like today, you have the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock games. So you're just still getting lineups while you're on air, which is hard. And then also, if we did 12 to 1 every Saturday, I'm never making a Saturday Orioles game. So
right, that's true. I think I'm going to pull up FanDuel here as well. I just want to see. I think that it's different slates, right, for FanDuel and DraftKings. I just made my lineup generator video. Seemed like FanDuel broke it up more, maybe. Let's see. What's the main slate? Yeah, the main doesn't start until 4:10 Eastern for FanDuel. So it's just 7 games as opposed to 11 on DraftKings. So that's something that we should probably factor in, I guess, as we're talking about this. Of course, I just pulled up lineup generator. Let me get that into stream so we can, the simulator. Let's take a brief look at the Sims.
I'm glad you said that because I registered FanDuel and didn't even notice that it started at 4.
Yeah, so you don't have to get those in early. You can wait a little bit on those FanDuel lineups. Kind of nice there. We'll take a look at, so we have the pre-contest simulator. I'm sure if you've watched these shows, you know that this came out this past week. People have been absolutely crushing it with this Sims tool. It's been really exciting to see the early success with the Sims tool, because I kind of thought there might be a little bit of a buffer there where people are not really sure how to use it, kind of taking some time to figure it out. We really haven't had that. We've had people crushing it right away. It's been fun to see. We're not going to take a look at the pre-contest simulator right now. We're going to take a look at the contests that we had yesterday, how those went for people. So I'm going to choose yesterday's slate. We'll take a look at what's the one I want to look at here? relay throw. We'll take a look at the relay throw, how lineups did in that relative to what the expectation was. So user ROI. Now let's take a look at lineup, individual lineups, a little bit more interesting. And then sim lineup ROI. So the top lineups in terms of expected ROI. Emma 89 had the highest expected ROI, followed by Zeroth. I think that he might be using the simulator tool Zeroth. I saw him in comments talking about it a little bit yesterday. I might be wrong about that. A lot of pros up at the top. We had Zeroth, Royal Pain up here. I see lucky guesses. So some really solid players had high simulated expected ROI, and the actual ROI doesn't always work out the way that it should. But cool to see. At least the top lineup did have actual lineup actually made some money here. Cool to see. Let's see what the actual. Do we have somebody with positive expected ROI win this one? No, we had another slate where the lineup maybe didn't project well for us, but it did turn out pretty well in this one with Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Wells being the pitchers you needed, along with looks like a pod stack and some Astros, pods Astros. Oh, and Pirates in here as well. What is the construction here? We got Gary Sanchez. Oh, is Gary Sanchez the only Padre here? We've got Jose Altuve, Kyle Tucker. Huh. So that's probably why this one didn't.
Four Pirates, 3 Astros, and a Padre.
eBay.
Yeah, so it's 4-3.
Oh, okay. All right. So it is a pretty common construction here. Yeah. Nice lineup. Took it down. Congrats to Oakley 357. Always fun to win $50,000. I'm curious how many lineups did Oakley run? 49 lineups. Okay, so it wasn't like a single entry, not a 150 maxer. 49 lineups. Good for Oakley there. But cool to be able to see how how your individual lineups did. You don't always just want to look at how the top lineups projected. You can look at your own lineups. You can filter it out to just see how your lineups are doing in this post-contest simulator. Very cool tool. Again, the simulator, which includes both the pre-contest and post-contest sims, going to be $180 a month. So it's just $6 a day if you are a serious DFS player. I highly recommend signing up for the Sims tool if you haven't already. The link is in the description of this video. We do have a lot of games to get through, though, so we will
plus 5.5% for me in sim ROI, minus 48% actual ROI.
All right, so didn't turn out the way that you would have hoped, I guess.
I mean, it's to your point though. It's always nice to see a positive number.
Right, to know that you are playing well, even if it didn't work out, is kind of a nice thing to see.
Yeah, and like obviously you need to keep in mind like how much your pre-contest process involves the sims, because like if it's purely our projections in our sim, like you should expect a higher number than usual.
Sure.
So I think that is one thing to pay attention to, like where you normally come in, and adjust from there. But always nice to see a positive number there.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when things, similar for me, I did not end up having a great night yesterday. Didn't turn out the way. Early on, I was looking okay. I was making some money early. I had a good amount of the Astros, and I had Jose Abreu, who hit a home run right away. So that was fun. And then the rest of the night did not go so well. I had less of the Padres than I expected to, and they ended up being the stack you needed. So
Pirates too. Like
good point. Yeah, Pirates went off, and I didn't really have much of the Pirates, I don't think.
I'm happy to see a positive ROI for me too, because one thing that is going to affect your like pre and post ROI is like how good of a job you do at mimicking the field and giving the sims something that is comparable to work with.
Right.
And yesterday I had said to Josh between the set of lineups that I put in and our ownership projections, I think that was probably the biggest gap I've noticed so far, because normally the set of lineups I crunch mirrors ownership pretty closely. And so I just use those. But yesterday, my crunch was only giving me like 16-17% Wells and like 25 to 30% Ohtani. And so it was like, all right, this might end up being really bad if ownership's right on those guys. And ownership was right on those guys. So I'm actually happy to see I still had a positive sim ROI.
Yeah, that is nice to see. And yeah, that's a good point. Like, so the post-contest sims, it is based on the actual lineups that are in there. So it's not just like based on, what we expected going into the slate exposure to be. It's based on the actual lineups that are in the contest, how you'd expect your lineup to have done against those other contests. So yeah, it's a big factor is just like how well did you represent the field? How well did you, get the ownership projection right. So yeah, it's always good to see that positive ROI, especially on days when it doesn't actually work out for you. All right, 11 games to get through, Adam, here on DraftKings. We'll start with Arizona at Detroit. We've got Ryan Nelson on the mound for the Diamondbacks, Matt Boyd for the Tigers. Any interest in these pitchers?
I think either of them are okay if you need to pay down. Ryan Nelson obviously has a very appealing matchup. He's $5,400. He's not a great pitcher by any stretch, but it is the best matchup that. Wait, where did this? Oh, I was on FanDuel, so I didn't see this game. But it is obviously a really, really good matchup. Against right-handed pitching this year, the Tigers are dead last in WRC plus at 73 on their active roster, 24% strikeout percentage. Again, Nelson, not a great pitcher, but if you do need to pay down, I don't have any real issues getting there at a very cheap price tag against the Tigers. So far this season, only a 13.9% strikeout percentage, 5.1 xFIP. Like, you shouldn't be going out of your way to get to this guy, but it is at least a good matchup at a cheap price tag. Similarly for Boyd, probably a little bit underpriced at 6,800, but he does have a tough matchup against Arizona, certainly more difficult than Nelson's matchup against the Tigers. Since the start of last season, Arizona's active roster has a 108 WRC plus and only a 20.2% K percentage against lefties. Boyd's pulling around 5-6% ownership. So I view these guys pretty similarly in that I don't particularly want either one, but they're at least good enough that if I have a lineup where I have to pay down to this price range and I need a low owned guy, they're fine.
Makes sense. What about the bats here against these pitchers?
Yeah, I think the bats are pretty interesting because neither pitcher is great. We know that the better offense is Arizona. They have a 4.7 implied run total, so that looks pretty appealing. Boyd so far this season, 167 expected ISO to righties with a 24% K percentage, 100 expected ISO to lefties, 18% K percentage. So he has been pretty solid at limiting power, having more issues with righties as you would expect. But you just have good bats in this lineup. Ketel Marte is always going to be a good second base option. Gurriel, Walker, Rivera, all solid plays. Corbin Carroll, lefty, but who really cares? This guy's a monster. He's hitting second at 5,400. So some interest in Arizona against Boyd. In the top stacks tool, they are coming in sixth in top stack percentage at 5.3%. They're pulling 5.3% ownership. So no real edge to be had there in terms of ownership versus top stack percentage, but still a high upside spot. Detroit is looking like one of the better value stacks if you need it. They are towards the bottom in top stack percentage, as you would expect, at 2.5%. But 13% chance of being the top value team is second highest only to Oakland. They are higher than Oakland in top stack percentage by a little bit. So not looking to get to the Tigers too much, but they do have Kerry Carpenter back at 3K. That's a nice bump. He can actually hit for some power, which is good. But yeah, they're just kind of yesterday's Athletics. I mean, I guess today's Athletics are also yesterday's Athletics, but where they're useful to just kind of mix into lineups as cheap bats, but you're not really wanting to get to them.
Okay. And how would you rank the four sides of the game?
Diamondbacks 1, Nelson 2, Tigers 3, Boyd 4.
Have you looked at all at the UFC slate yet? We were getting a lot of hot takes in chat, and I haven't even looked at it. Do you have any hot takes?
No, I don't even know who's fighting.
Okay. Second game on the slate, we've got Miami at Chicago. Sandy Alcantara on the mound for the Marlins. Michael Kopech for the White Sox. Any interest in these pitchers?
Yeah, both of them. They're both coming in between 9 and 10K on DraftKings. Decent matchups for them both. Miami's active roster against right-handed pitching, just an 89 WRC plus. They have only struck out 20.8% of the time. Part of that is because Luis Arias is essentially impossible to strike out at the top of the order. So it can be a little bit deceiving. Like, it's not a great strikeout matchup anyway, but Arias is going to pull those numbers down just because he strikes out so infrequently. Kopech's been really difficult to gauge this year. He started the season out really poorly. There was some speculation that he was tipping pitches, and that coincided with him then coming out, giving us a couple of dominant starts where he went like 8 innings, gave up 1 hit, and I think back-to-back starts. It was at least something similar to that, striking out a bunch of guys. 8 innings pitched against the Royals 4 starts ago, 7 against Cleveland. He gave up 1 hit against KC, 2 against Cleveland. Then he got roughed up by the Angels, followed it up with another very good start against the Tigers. Even in that start, he struggled against the Angels, though. He did strike out 10 guys. So over his last 4 starts, 10, 9, 10, and 9 strikeouts for Kopech. He had not gotten more than he got 9 once prior to that. Other than that, he hadn't had more than 7 before this stretch. So I do think he made some adjustments. I do think that you're seeing his stuff play better now, and you do get a pretty good matchup here. So definitely interested in Kopech at 9,100 right now. In the top pitchers tool, we have him 5th highest top 2 pitcher percentage at 14%, 12.5% ownership. So that looks pretty good. And then on the other side, you have Alcantara, who it is a negative park shift for him going into whatever they call Chicago now. I don't know if it's still Cellular Field or not, but it's a good hitter's park. It's certainly a lot better than Miami. Alcantara has struggled this year as well, especially compared to what you normally get from him. 21% K percentage is mediocre. 4.22 xFIP, not great. Does still work deep into games, so that's nice. Price tag is reasonable. The White Sox against right-handed pitching this year do have a 90 WRC plus, so they've been well below average, just shy of a 23% strikeout percentage. Alcantara's pulling about 20% ownership right now, 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So no issues getting to him. It is interesting to me, though, that he is projected for more ownership than Kopech at a slightly higher price tag, despite us projecting Kopech to be successful more often.
Okay. I see Josh Engelman in chat. Josh, you didn't do your tiers yesterday. You left me hanging. I had to just leave Greg to do the tiers on the MLB show yesterday. You know that I've been Greg and I on Live Before Lock every day. People ask about to do tiers for MLB, and I've just been straight up going to Josh's Twitter, pulling up Josh's tweet, and I do that analysis. I'm like, I don't really look at tiers, so I just pull up who does Josh like today, and then Greg does his own. Good to see Josh in chat this morning, though. Maybe he has some hot takes for UFC. I know Josh just won like a month ago or so, the UFC slate. So hopefully Josh has something. How do you like the bats in this Miami-Chicago game?
I don't. I have a lot of respect for both pitchers. The only thing working for the bats is that it is, a good hitter's park. It is like 80 degrees in Chicago, so that's nice. If this were a smaller slate, I think they'd be, more appealing. But as is, about a 3% chance of being the top stack for Miami. Chicago coming in with about a 2% chance of being the top stack. Both pretty low probability plays. I don't anticipate getting them much.
Okay. And how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Kopech, Alcantara. You could flip those 2 if you want. I think it's very, very close. I guess the Marlins and then the White Sox.
Okay. Also, Josh says he's not playing UFC today. Also, I did watch the NBA video that Josh and Lofty did in the morning yesterday. Lofty, we did the Underdog show in the afternoon, and Lofty told me that I should go back and watch it. And yeah, that's entertaining. If you guys, even if you're not, it's obviously about the NBA slate yesterday. Just watch like the first 20 minutes of the NBA strategy show yesterday was very entertaining.
Yeah, I sent the 3-minute clip that Lofty had posted on Twitter to my mom and just said, these are the idiots I work with.
Yeah, I should do the same. All right. Cincinnati at St. Louis. We have Andrew Abbott back on the mound for the Reds. Miles Michaelis for the Cardinals. Any interest in these pitchers?
Michaelis for the Cards, decent spot for him, 3.7 implied run total. Not the best strikeout pitcher at all. 8,100 is a very reasonable price tag, though. 11% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher, 22% projected ownership because he also is relatively likely to be a top 2 value at 8.5%. Not a bad matchup with the Reds. Not the easiest matchup, but 97 WRC plus, pretty close to league average against right-handed pitching, 23% strikeout percentage. So Michaelis looks like a pretty good SP2 option. As far as Abbott goes, definitely a scary matchup for him taking on the Cardinals. We know that they have a lot of right-handed power in this lineup. They don't strike out a lot. He is only 6,500. He's pulling 8% ownership. He's another one I think that you kind of just throw into that Matt Boyd bucket, where if you need to pay down for somebody in this price range and you're trying to save some ownership, Bobby Miller is the clear 7K or below guy that you're going to get to. Cole Irvin's pulling ownership as well at 6,200. But if you're trying, you're like, I need a value pitcher and the rest of my team's chalky, so I'm trying to be different. Abbott's at least good enough that you can, take a shot on him and hope for the best. He is a top 100 ranked pitching prospect. This is a much more difficult spot than his debut was against the Brewers. He's also $2,500 more expensive. So It's nowhere near the same spot as it was in his debut, but still cheap enough where if you need that value pitcher that's low owned, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, if you put up the same score, 26.5, I was just looking up, I was like, I feel like he had a great game last time up. 26.5 DK points at 4,000 in his first game. Obviously, if you could expect that again, you'd want to play him, but you think this is a tough matchup for him. Is he do you think he's a big splits pitcher, or just like you expect all pitchers to end up being splits, lefty against righty is going to be tough?
Yeah, I mean, you expect lefties to be worse against righties. And yeah, I mean, to compare his 2 matchups, since the start of last season, the active roster for St. Louis against left-handed pitching has a 128 WRC plus, has only struck out 19.7% of the time with a 209 ISO. the Brewers, who he faced in his debut, have a 97 WRC plus, have struck out just shy of 25% of the time with a 140 ISO. So, the talent is there. Hitting is still really, really hard. Any pitcher is capable of having a good game, and this guy is certainly more talented than just any pitcher, but it's a pretty brutal matchup.
Okay. How about the bats here?
Yeah, I think the bats are interesting, more so on the Cardinal side for all the reasons I just said. You have Goldschmidt, Arenado in the lineup. There is no Contreras, so that hurts. But you do have a pretty cheap Paul DeJong hitting sixth. You have a cheap Jordan Walker, who maybe is going to figure it out at the major league level this time around. Tommy Edmonds leading off, multi-position eligible, reasonably priced. You have a $2,200 cleanup hitter in Luken Baker, who I don't know who he is, but the fact that he's batting cleanup for the Cardinals makes me think he can probably hit. I'm pulling that up now, but you have a nice mix of value and upside here with the Cards. Baker is 26. He projects to be a below average hitter. So I guess the reason he's batting cleanup is because the Cards have just been clueless all year. But the projection system's on FanGraphs. I mean, Zips has him at a 72 WRC plus, Steamer 92 WRC plus rest of the year. The Bats at 85, ATC's at 102. Projects for decent power. They all have him like 160 to 170 in ISO. So whether or not he ends up being a good hitter is kind of irrelevant. He's 2,200. He can hit the ball far, and he's batting cleanup.
You can only play one of Baker and Goldschmidt. How much is that like?
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah. It does drive down the value of the stack as a whole. But the nice thing about the Cards is that it is a pretty deep lineup. You can if you let's say you're paying up for pitching, you're paying up for other one-offs, and you want to go Baker over Goldschmidt, it's not like you are running out of good pieces to get to in a 5-man stack. Like Edman, Arenado, Baker, $2,400 Carlson, and then one of DeJong or Walker is still a very strong stack and a very good value stack. If you are paying down elsewhere and you have the money and you want to do the same thing, but Goldschmidt over Baker, obviously that's going to be a very good stack as well. So that is one nice thing. It's always unfortunate when you can't stack 1 through 5 for a team, but at least for the Cardinals, their lineup is pretty deep. If you're getting down to the 6-7 guys, you still have power upside there. So that's nice.
Okay. And how would you rank?
Just checking the ownership here, 6% coming into Goldschmidt, 1% to Baker. So no real ownership. I mean, 6-1, but no real ownership concerns either way that you go.
Right. Not getting a ton either way. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Michaelis, Cardinals, Reds, Abbott. I think those two are pretty comparable.
Okay. 4th game on the slate, we've got Minnesota at Toronto. Joe Ryan on the mound for the Twins. Bowden Francis for the Blue Jays. I noticed him in lineup generator this morning. I already did my lineup generator VOD. I was getting to a little bit of Bowden Francis, which surprised me. Do you have any interest in either of these pitchers?
So we have Trevor Richards opening for Toronto. You said Odin Francis is following him?
Bowden Francis.
Bowden Francis.
Let's see if they're in DraftKings. Huh. Yeah, they do have Trevor Richards listed as the only pitcher on DraftKings. We have Bowden Francis as the pitcher in both lineup generator and Fantasy Cruncher. So I assume that he's expected to be the long reliever.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I just know Trevor Richards is starting, but Richards typically isn't a starter, so I assume somebody's following him.
Yep. Let's see.
I mean, his most recent, Trevor Richards hasn't thrown more than 25 pitches in an outing since May 25th. He hasn't thrown more than 40 since May 14th. The most he's thrown all year is 44. He was a starter years ago for Miami, but I'm assuming you're getting somebody following him, whether that's Francis or not. I don't know. But
so does that make you less inclined to play him because it's not guaranteed?
Yeah, and
obviously that's going to, but let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wasn't really going to play him anyway, but that does make it look worse.
Yeah, just adds a little bit more reason not to play him. All right, how about Joe Ryan?
I mean, Joe Ryan, it's a really tough matchup for him. He is a really good pitcher. The interesting thing with him is that he is only pulling 7% ownership, but he's also $10,600. So we have him projected to go under-owned when you compare ownership to top 2 pitcher percentage, but you have to keep in mind that he's also really expensive. So if you can get there, the upside's obviously there, but it is also a tough matchup. Toronto doesn't strike out a lot. They obviously have a lot of really good hitters against right-handed pitching this year. They are 5th with a 114 WRC plus. They're also only striking out 20.8% of the time. Ryan so far this season against right-handed bats, does have a 33.6% K percentage, only a 121 expected ISO. So, the upside is there. This is one of those spots where you're going to see, from a projection standpoint, the Blue Jays not look great and Ryan not look great. But, one side, kind of has to give. But
Right.
Ryan's certainly more of a luxury than anything else at that price tag, in a really, really tough spot.
Okay. Matthew Bellman in chat. And if you guys have not yet watched High Stakes, which came out yesterday, I interviewed Matthew Bellman, a really good interview. Check it out if you haven't already. But Matthew says, Francis hasn't been announced yet. I think DK jumped the gun on that before Richards was announced. So yeah, maybe that was DK led us to having Bowden Francis in here. Maybe they put him, I don't know what happened here, but yeah, it hasn't been announced. So maybe stay away from him. How much interest do you have in Twins or Blue Jays bats?
Interested in Twins, sort of. So the nice thing is that they do have power in their lineup. Trevor Richards isn't anything special. 256 expected ISO to lefties this year, only 110 to righties. Strikeout stuff's been really good. We don't know who's following them, so that is like the plus and minus. Bullpen games kind of suck to take hitters against, but it is a good park to hit in. The Twins do have cheap power in their lineup, so that's nice. So just, middle of the road stack for me. We have them 7th in top stack percentage. Again, that's with Francis projected to pitch, so I don't know how much that'll change, but 4.5% top stack percentage, 3% ownership. Toronto, middle of the pack as well, but a little further down, 3% chance to be in the top stack, 2% ownership. They do have a 4.5 implied run total, which is higher than you typically expect teams to have against Joe Ryan. The Blue Jays are basically just in that spot where they're the Blue Jays. They're really good. They're not owned. If you want to take shots on them, great, but it is a pretty low probability spot given how good Ryan is.
Okay. And how would you rank the four sides of the game?
Either Ryan or Minnesota or Toronto. And then one of those three again. And then one of those three a third time. And then Toronto pitching last.
All right. So there's a tier break. You just don't want Toronto pitching. All right. That makes sense. All right.
They're all just sort of like middle of the road. If you get there, cool, but they're going to be tough to get to type things. Well, Minnesota's not really tough to get to. They are cheap, but Minnesota has the uncertainty of like, who the hell are they facing?
Right. All right. That works well enough. You just went the Greg route of like, I'm not really going to take stands here. I'm just going to tell you I'm not that interested in.
I mean, I guess Minnesota, I guess, is first because they are cheap. They have the same implied run total as Toronto. They're not facing Joe Ryan. We know that. So I guess Minnesota won. The Blue Jays and Joe Ryan are basically the same play to me. You're overpaying based on you're overpaying for the median, but the ceiling is still really high.
1-2 says, I'm going to just stack the Twins now. I like that. I like that call. We should all be stacking the Twins today. This is my takeaway.
Yeah, I think that's the best route from this game. Just you look at the pricing here and it's a bullpen game. That's not the most appealing thing, but the most expensive hitter in their projected lineup is Correa at 4,400. The next most expensive hitter is Kepler at 3,500, Kirilloff at 3,300. I mean, this team is free with a 4.5 implied run total in the Rogers Center.
Yeah, and a great team leading the AL Central. Last I checked, actually, I assume that's still true.
I don't know. Yeah. It's the same as knowing who's like winning single
A. If you just got to get to the playoffs, Adam, anything can happen in the playoffs, especially for baseball. All right. Let's take a minute here to look at So Rare, which again, you can start playing So Rare for free if you haven't already. I just put the link in the description. It is in the description of this video. I just put it into chat as well. If you're interested in getting started, you can play So Rare for free. It really is a lot of fun. The next slate is going to be starting on Monday. Every slate, they have slates Monday through Thursday, and then Friday through Sunday are the slates for So Rare. We are just one day into this slate for So Rare, and of course, my pitchers haven't started yet. I got Shane McClanahan, Brandon Bielak left to for some starts here. Looking forward to seeing how those go. But if you're interested in playing, you can get going for free. When you sign up, you're going to get some free cards. You can enter those into free contests. And you can see here, if I look at the upcoming tab, in these free contests, you can actually win limited cards, which are worth some money. You can sell those on the secondary market. So get going for free, and you can win some cards that are actually worth some money. Or if you want to pay like I have been doing, you can, of course, play with those limited cards. You can go and buy them on the secondary market. You can win them in contests, and then you can play them in these contests. It really is a lot of fun. 2 slates per week. Check it out if you haven't already. Again, I already put the link into chat, so check that out. Adam, the next game that we have here is San Diego at Colorado. Ryan Weathers on the mound for the Pods. Kyle Freeland for the Rockies. Are you playing any Coors Field pitchers today?
Absolutely not.
All right. What is your level of interest in Coors Field bats today?
Extremely high. Neither pitcher is great. Ryan Weathers is flat out bad. He is facing, a Rockies team that also isn't very good. But so far this season, Weathers striking out 15.3% of hitters, 15.1 for Freeland. So comparable there. 4.8 xFIP for Freeland, 5.4 for Weathers. 1.3 to 1.5 home runs per 9 for both guys. Weathers walks more hitters. You have a 6.6 implied run total for the Padres, about 6 flat for the Rockies. So both sides are going to look good. The Padres are obviously going to look better because they have much better hitters. The Rockies lineup just came out. I mean, you're talking about Elias Diaz hitting 4th, Montero hitting 5th, Nolan Jones, Ezekiel Tovar hitting 6th and 7th. You compare that to what the Padres are likely running out. Diaz becomes Gary Sanchez, Montero becomes Bogarts, Jones becomes Cronenworth, Tovar becomes Kim, and that's not even mentioning, Tatis, Soto, Machado at the top. So obviously you're going to prefer the Padres side, even though Freeland is a somewhat better pitcher than Weathers. But yeah, both sides here are going to look great. Both sides should pull a lot of ownership. They are first and second in top stack percentage, 20% to San Diego, about 9% to the Rockies, 7% ownership coming into the Rockies, 16% to San Diego. So ownership not really too problematic on either side. Individually for San Diego, you can also offset ownership. Like Fernando Tatis is projected for 31%, Sanchez is projected for 21%, Machado 16%, Soto 16%. But you go down the list, and again, we don't have their lineup confirmed, but Brandon Dixon only projected for 8% at 3K in Coors, Cronenworth at 7%, 4,800 lefty. But if you're able to get Freeland out of the game early, that doesn't really matter. Grisham 6%. So there are ways to offset that Tatis ownership within a stack as well. Certainly love both sides of this game.
Okay, and how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Padres 1, Rockies 2. Weathers 3, Freeland 4.
All right. Guitar Z-Man 247 asks, when are you throwing the first pitch at a future Twins game, Neil? Whenever they invite me. If they invite me, I'll throw that first pitch. I don't think the Twins know who I am, though. Tommy David Walker.
Got to throw a strike. I put the pressure on you.
Did you throw a strike?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've actually seen the video. I know that there is video out there of Adam throwing out the first pitch at an Orioles game.
I for sure thought I bounced it out of my hand, but it popped his glove and it was a strike, so we're good.
Did you throw it hard, or did you just throw like a ceremonial, like the way?
No, I mean I didn't throw it. I didn't throw it hard. Like I didn't because it got in my head too. Because I didn't throw from the mound. They had me throw from like right in front of the mound.
Okay.
And so then I didn't want to be the asshole either. That was just like throwing it as hard as I could from like
right.
45 feet away.
Who did you throw to?
What'd you say?
Who did you throw to?
Sean Armstrong caught it. He is
that an Orioles player?
What'd you say?
Was he an Orioles player at the time?
Yeah, he was a reliever. I think he's on Tampa now. I don't know where he is now. But yeah, he's a reliever. But he caught it. So yeah, like it got in my head because I was like, if it's on the mound, I can at least throw it hard. Not that I hadn't thrown a ball in years either. But
right.
Then it was like, oh well, I don't want to bounce it, but I also don't want to like be the dick that just like guns it at his face. And then like out of my hand, it felt like it like just slipped and I'd spiked it. So I was really happy to hear it hit his glove.
Yeah, that is. And how did you get the invitation to pitch at an Orioles game?
DraftKings.
Okay, DraftKings set you up there. Yeah, I would. These days, I'm like, I used to be able to throw pretty well. Like I've never been like a great thrower, but like I could throw it where I wanted to go. Generally, just not like that hard. These days, I'm like, usually I can throw it where I want it to go, and then every once in a while, like a hitch will come up in my shoulder as I'm trying to throw, and I'm like, I'd be kind of nervous about that happening if I were throwing a first pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I had a whole thing. So like when I played, like I got the yips to where like if you hit me a routine ground ball at shortstop or at second base, like God knows where that ball was going. But if like it was a tough play and I didn't have time to think, I could like make any throw. And so like then that was in my head too when they had me in front of the mound where it's like, oh good, I have to make like another short throw now. Like I'm gonna like hit the backstop.
Right. Arcathel's back says Neil gave up 12 runs. LOL. I gave up 17 runs actually on Thursday, not 12 runs. But thank you for underselling how many I threw. And I did want to address this. Tommy David asks, is So Rare pay to win? If it were, I would be winning because I keep on throwing money at these limited contests. I mean, it obviously helps if you put money in, you can get whatever cards you want in the limited contest. But for MLB in particular, it really isn't because it's just so not projectable. And for the common contests in particular, like you can't pay for them. You can only win them in contests. You can do your swaps, and of course you get them when you sign up, but like it's impossible for the common contest. So I would say not at all, obviously, for the common contest. And for the limited contest that I play, like it helps if you put a little bit of money into it, but really I have not found it to be paid to win, because I've been trying and it has not been working out. All right. Next game on the slate is
Try paying more.
I've tried paying all the money at them. You can have all the cards, but you can't play them all. You only get one single entry as well, so that's part of the rough spot. It obviously helps, like paying for that Spencer Strider where that you can play in the relief spot in the limited contest, but other than that, really not much you can do. All right, Kansas City at Baltimore. Brady Singer on the mound for the Royals. Cole Irvin for your Orioles. Any interest in these pitchers?
They're both viable as very cheap SP2s. Cole Irvin, I mentioned a minute ago, is getting some ownership. You're never going to feel good about playing a 13% Irvin, but he's 6,200. He's got a solid matchup against KC. Only a 4.1 implied run total. We talked about it a lot yesterday too with the Orioles going up against Lynch. But when you have a mediocre lefty in Camden Yards, it's kind of frustrating because, like for hitters, because typically you'd be targeting right-handed power, but it just plays so poorly in Camden Yards. So, that does help Irvin. The guys that he would most likely struggle with are contending with a wall 370 feet away and 15 feet high. So he's fine as a value. I don't think he's like drastically better than other cheap guys that aren't getting as much ownership. You compare him to Singer, Boyd, Schuster, Abbott, Nelson. These guys are all getting less ownership. They all do project a little bit worse. They're not facing KC in a pitcher-friendly park. Some of them are a little bit more expensive, but it's still not a great pitcher in Irvin. You're not going to feel great about getting to him, but he is a bit underpriced for the matchup. On the other side, Singer getting about 7% ownership, 7% chance of being a top 2 pitcher at 5,800. He has really fallen off this year after being pretty solid last year. Doesn't have an easy matchup here, and just sort of like if you're playing him, it's just because he's cheap and you're hoping for the best. 20.5% strikeout percentage this year, 4.4 xFIP. 5,800 is too cheap of a price tag for Brady Singer, but you're still talking about the Orioles having a 4.9 implied run total. It's like 85 degrees in Baltimore today, and you don't have the same benefit for him that you do for Irvin and that you did for Lynch yesterday, because the most dangerous hitters, or some of the most dangerous hitters in this lineup, Frazier, Rutschman, Santander, like they're all going to be hitting from the left side. Left-handed power still plays up in Baltimore. Gunnar Henderson's a lefty. Hicks will be hitting left-handed. So, Austin Hayes, who's been hitting the hell out of the ball this year, is right-handed. Mountcastle, if he's back in the lineup, is right-handed. But you're going to get a predominantly left-handed Orioles lineup in a park where power still, left-handed power still plays well.
All right. So you like the Orioles.
I do.
All right. Tell me about your level of interest in the bats.
Yeah, it's high. I mean, not only does Camden Yards play up left-handed power, but that's been Singer's issue this year as well. 250 expected ISO to lefties, 227 actual ISO, 387 expected WOBA, 388 actual WOBA. So both in terms of actual results and expected results, Singer is really getting lit up by lefties. He hasn't been great against righties either, but it sets up as a pretty tough spot for him. Baltimore, 4% chance of being the top stack, 4% projected ownership. I wouldn't mind if I get to more Baltimore than that.
All right. And how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Orioles 1, Orioles bats 1, Irvin 2. Probably KC 3, Singer 4. I think Irvin, KC, and Singer are all pretty comparable. They are all not very good, but also pretty inexpensive in decent spots. The Baltimore bats are clearly one for me.
All right. Arcathel's back says that was a good show yesterday, referring to the MLB live before lock show that Greg and I did, and referring to, I believe, the beginning of the show when we came in. Greg asked me about my softball. I told him, I had, I think, my best game of the year, but we gave up 17 runs, had a lot of fielding errors and stuff. And then Greg gaslit me into admitting that I'm possibly the worst player on my team. So it wasn't that fun for me. It wasn't that fun for me yesterday, but that's kind of how that show went. All right.
Is Eric actually singing the national anthem somewhere?
I thought that I was going to ask that as well, but then he said that's not a real thing. I was wondering that. I think Matt Savoca, who did a lot of shows in the NFL season, I think that he sang the national anthem at one point. Maybe I'm misremembering. There was somebody in my law school who also sang the national anthem for.
You could not pay me enough money.
No, I would never. If I was in a group of like 50 people, I would like lip sing the national anthem for them. Yeah, I not interested there. All right, next we've got New York at Pittsburgh. Kodai Senga on the mound for the Mets. Johan Oviedo for the Pirates. Any interest in these pitchers?
Senga's pretty interesting as a tournament play. He's second in top 2 pitcher percentage at 15%. He's only pulling 8% ownership at 9,800. At this point, you kind of know with Senga that he's going to be inconsistent. He walks too many guys, but he has struck out 29% of hitters this year. He does have a 3.96 xFIP. He hasn't been bad. It's just, the walks obviously can catch up to him. It's just risky to put extra guys on base. One swing of the bat and you're losing 6 points, if 6 fantasy points if you've walked a couple guys ahead of it. So obviously it's risky, but 33.9% K percentage to lefties, only a 110 expected ISO there, 24.5% K percentage to righties, 178 expected ISO for right-handed hitters. Pirates have a 4.3 implied run total. Not a bad, solid pitcher's park. It is warm, so the ball will carry a bit, but I am interested in Senga at the relatively low ownership. You compare him to other pitchers around him. We have Taj Bradley getting about 3 times the ownership at $500 less in a brutal matchup with the Rangers. 17% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, so very similar to Senga. We have Evaldi at 11K, so 1,200 more than Senga. Another very tough matchup against Tampa. 14.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, getting twice the ownership. Aaron Nola getting slightly more ownership at 10-3 against the Dodgers. None of the good pitchers on today's slate have remotely appealing matchups. Senga's is pretty easily the best against Pittsburgh because they're not the Rangers, the Rays, or the Dodgers. So I'm a little confused why Senga's not getting more ownership, and I am definitely interested in getting there, especially if the ownership holds where it is. On the other side for Oviedo, not much interest there, 7,500. So he's not expensive, but it's not like you're getting a ton of value. Very difficult Mets lineup to strike out. Good Mets lineup, pretty solid Mets lineup overall. No Alonso does weaken it a bit, but I am interested in Senga. I think it's more difficult to get to Oviedo.
Okay. And we're still not concerned with the home road splits for Senga. I mean, he does have.
I am still not concerned with the home road splits for Senga.
We don't have that sample size yet. All right. What was your level of interest in the bats? Ask you when? When is 2028? Okay, I'll ask you then.
He did go 2 2/3 and give up 3 earned runs at home last time out. So maybe we're flipping things now.
All right. So we're finally getting rid of the home road splits a little bit. All right, what is your level of interest in the bats in this game?
Not overly high. I don't really like the Pirates too much against Senga. 4.3 implied run total is fine. They are cheap in most of their lineup. Reynolds is 5K, McCutcheon's 4,400, Hayes is 4K. Everybody else is sub 4K. So as a value stack, they look okay, but nothing really that excites me there. 2.5% top stack percentage, still only a 3.5% top value percentage as well. On the Met side, we have them third in top stack percentage at 6.5%, 7% projected ownership. Oviedo is not great. He's not bad. He's just sort of there. 151 expected ISO to lefties with a 23% strikeout percentage this year, 112 to righties. So there's nothing individually that you're really looking at and saying like, oh, I think this is a great home run spot, but you do have pretty cheap bats on the Mets. The most expensive hitter in their projected lineup is Lindor at 4,800. The only other hitter in their projected lineup above 4K is Nimmo at 4,100. So this is a team where if you stack them, you can do pretty much whatever you want with the rest of your lineup. Francisco Alvarez, if he's in the lineup, is going to be one of your best catching plays today. Cheap, hitting second most likely, and very good. Brett Beatty gives you high upside and value at third base at 3,200. So the Mets do look pretty appealing, even though the park isn't great and the matchup isn't perfect.
Okay. And how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Senga or the Mets or Senga, Pirates 3, Oviedo 4.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Next game on the slate, we've got Los Angeles at Philadelphia. Bobby Miller on the mound for the Dodgers. Aaron Nola for the Phillies. Jacob RJ says, is it bad? I'm probably the highest you can be on Bobby Miller. Kid's a stud. I don't know much about Bobby Miller. Do you have any interest in Bobby Miller or Aaron Nola today, Adam?
Yeah, Miller looks like one of the best pitching plays. He's only $7,000 on DraftKings, so it's not the best matchup against Philly. It is a negative park shift going into Citizens Bank, but you've I've alluded to it a couple times, and you've probably just gotten the sense already from the pitching we've talked about that we once again have a slate where it's not that you don't have any good pitchers, but it's very difficult to be very confident in a lot of the pitching because the pitchers with good matchups are, for the most part, not very good pitchers, and the good pitchers have very, very tough matchups. So slates like this, I'm more inclined to just try and find anything cheap that I can have any amount of confidence in. And Bobby Miller at 7K is underpriced. There is risk. It's a tough park. It's a tough matchup, but he is a talented young pitcher. 4.5 implied run total for the Phillies. He's projected for 21% ownership. We have him with a 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So again, to kind of just put that in context, he's $7,000. The cheapest pitcher ahead of him in top 2 pitcher percentage is Kopech at 9,100, and you're talking 14% to 12%. The Bradley is first in top 2 pitcher percentage at 17% compared to 12% for Miller, and a $2,300 price difference. So it just is a spot where most of these pitchers are likely to give up, a few runs today based on their matchups. At least with Miller, it's easier to come back from that because he's cheap. So I do expect to get to a good amount of him. On the other side, very, very tough matchup for Nola. He is certainly one of the more talented pitchers on the slate, pulling 12% ownership, 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. But the thing that really makes it difficult is that you're not getting any sort of discount. He's still $10,300 facing the Dodgers, who obviously are a very good offense. 4th in WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year, 22% K percentage, 207 ISO, and they're getting a favorable park shift. So, if you want to get to Nola in tournaments at pretty low ownership, perfectly fine. There's not like a perfect pitching answer on this slate, but it is clearly a very difficult matchup, and you're still paying one of the highest salaries we've had on Nola in a while.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that his salary is up there in this matchup. What's your level of interest in the bats?
I like them in tournaments because I don't think you're going to get a lot of ownership going to either side, given that they are facing solid pitchers. But you're getting the Dodgers at 2.5% aggregate ownership in a good hitter's park, 4.5% chance of being the top stack. We already talked about the Coors game where we have the Padres with a 20% chance of being the top stack, Rockies at 9%. The next highest, the third highest top stack percentage on the slate is the Mets, who we just talked about at 6.5%. So, saying the Dodgers are at 4.5%, that puts them in line pretty much with every team on this slate that is not in Coors Field. And we know the type of power they have. Obviously, it's not a great matchup against Nola, but the upside is still certainly there. And then the same can be said for Philly, coming in with a 2.5% chance of being the top stack, 1% aggregate ownership. That's pretty appealing when you're facing a pitcher in Miller who isn't proven at the major league level. He does have good stuff. He has had good starts. He is likely to be good, but you still have Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Turner, Realmuto, Stott. This is not an easy lineup to get out. Their implied run total is the same as the Dodgers. It's, in line with most of the teams on this slate that aren't in Coors. So at no ownership, and then also you get the added benefit of 1/5 of the field rostering Bobby Miller. At no ownership, the Phillies are a pretty interesting tournament stack to me.
Okay. And with that in mind, how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Miller 1, probably Nola 2, Dodgers 3, Phillies 4.
We just got the Phillies lineup. I don't immediately see anything that looks weird about it. Looks like I think all 6 of the bats that you mentioned are in there for the Phillies.
Yeah, it's the lineup we expected.
Yeah. All right.
We also got the Twins lineup. Julian's back leading off, so that's going to be a good value second baseman.
Yeah.
We had already said, it's a good value team. No Royce Lewis, so that sucks. But Julian, Solano, Kirilloff, Correa, Larnach, top 5.
Nice.
No Polanco, so that's where Julian came from.
Okay. I like Julian, though. It's fun to see a rookie who's doing well.
Yeah.
All right, 3 games left to talk about here. Now we're up to the top pitcher on the slate. We've got Texas at Tampa Bay, Nathan Eovaldi on the mound for the Rangers, Taj Bradley for the Rays. What's your level of interest in these pitchers?
I'm interested in them both because they're both really, really good, and this is a very pitcher-friendly park. And like I said, we don't have a lot of pitching to like on this slate, but they do both terrify me. I mean, Texas is second with a 119 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year. They have struck out 23.5% of the time, but 119 WRC plus, 187 ISO. The only team that's been better than them against right-handed pitching this year is Tampa Bay, with a 128 WRC plus, 201 ISO, and 21.5% strikeout percentage. It's a really tough matchup for both of these guys, and you're not getting discounts. Nathan Eovaldi is $11,000 facing the best team in baseball. Taj Bradley, $9,300 facing the second best offense in baseball. They are, again, they're both good pitchers. Evaldi works deep into games. He's striking out 25% of hitters this year, 3.3 xFIP. Bradley has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 33%, 2.89 xFIP. He's been sensational since coming up. I'm going to be rostering both guys, but it's a situation where like they are two of the top three pitchers on the slate in terms of top two pitcher percentage, and they are two of the most popular pitchers as well. If you were to just throw like one good, like, Shohei Ohtani from yesterday on this slate, in a decent, a decent matchup against Seattle, if you were to throw like Spencer Strider on this slate, even like the other day against the Mets, like the interest level in Evaldi and Bradley goes away so quickly.
Right.
But, you have to take what you're given. They are certainly two of the most talented pitchers on the slate. And, again, hitting is really, really, really hard. So they are still more likely to do well than the offenses are.
Okay. How about these offenses? Obviously in tough matchups here. Any interest there?
It's purely, hey, I can get one of the top two offenses in baseball at no ownership. That's always going to be somewhat appealing. But Tampa Bay, dead last in top stack percentage for us. Texas is 7th from the bottom or 8th from the bottom. 2.7% top stack percentage for Texas, 2% for Tampa. They are both going under owned, 1% ownership to Texas, less than that for Tampa. So I doubt that I really get to either one, but it is certainly in the category of like, hey, these offenses are really, really good and nobody's going to play them. So it's not like you're wrong if you go there in large field tournaments.
Yeah. Justin Sports asked, we targeting mainly Coors and cash or spread out today? My guess would be that you're targeting Coors for the most part, especially because there aren't dominant pitchers that you really want to pay up for. So that would be my guess. But
yeah, Coors really stands out today because one, like you said, it's not like you have to prioritize paying up for pitching, but also because of the whole, like the inverse of what we've been saying with the pitching. Like you have a bunch of pretty good pitchers on the slate in tough matchups. So the inverse is that a lot of the best offenses are facing really good pitchers.
Right.
So that kind of just makes Coors even more valuable inherently.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And can you rank the four sides of this Texas Tampa game?
Bradley, Evaldi, Texas Tampa. Bradley ahead of Evaldi because he's cheaper. Texas ahead of Tampa because we're still talking about a rookie that has made less than like 10 starts.
Right. All right. Makes sense. And Dante asking, Neil, did your softball team win without your best bet? He's our best player on both sides of the field, was out. And no, we did not win. Apparently Dante was not watching the show. No, we got crushed. It was not a great game for my team. All right, 2 games left on this slate. We've got Washington at Atlanta is the next one. Mackenzie Gore on the mound for the Nationals. Jared Schuster for the Braves. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Yeah, some interest in Schuster at 6,700. 4-run implied total for the Nats. They are not an easy team to strike out, but since the start of last season, only a 94 WRC plus against left-handed pitching, 21.1% K percentage. Schuster is, looks decent based on his minor league numbers. Hasn't been very good in the major. Has been objectively horrible in the majors so far. 16% strikeout percentage, 14.5% walk percentage, 6.19 xFIP. Like if you're just going on what he has done, he is awful, but he's not likely to continue being that bad. He does have a solid matchup here in terms of run prevention, at least. And, again, this is just a slate where nothing is perfect pitching wise. 2020 first round pick, 24 years old. He's not likely to continue being as bad as he has been. Projects for an 18 to 20% strikeout percentage in the majors. So again, like he's probably not there yet. He's not going to be very good, but he is cheap. He does have a decent matchup, so I don't mind getting to him here and there. He's only projected for around 10% ownership. On the other side, Mackenzie Gore does have good strikeout stuff. Obviously, a tough matchup against the Braves. 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 5% ownership. So he is sort of interesting in tournaments because of the lack of ownership and the strikeout upside. Like if you compare him to some other pitchers priced around him, Miles Mikolas has an identical top 2 pitcher percentage. He's $800 less expensive, but he's projected for almost 6 times the ownership. Probably should be closer. Gore does give you more strikeout upside. Similarly, Michael Kopech for $200 more, 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher compared to 11%, but getting 3 times the ownership. So Gore is somebody where if you need, like if you're playing Coors, for example, you need to offset some ownership. Gore gives you upside, but the Braves have a 5.5 implied run total, and you should not feel confident at all about actually putting him in lineups.
With that in mind, 5.5 implied run total, one of the highest on the slate. What's your level of interest in Braves or the Nats here?
Yeah, definitely interested in the Braves just because of the upside they give you. They are fourth for us in top stack percentage at 6%, 10.5% aggregate ownership. I assume most of that is Ronald Acuna because that's how it normally works out. 17% to Acuna, 13 to Albies, 13 to Murphy, 11 to Riley, Olsen at 10, Harris at 7, Ozuna at 6, Arcia and Rosario 3 apiece. So as a stack, it's still not that concerning. From an ownership standpoint, Acuna is just going to be popular in stacks and as a one-off, as you would expect. But Gore has one thing working for him. Not only has he struck out 29.2% of righties this year, which is identical to lefties, he has held them to a 277 expected WOBA, 136 expected ISO. Again, this isn't a cakewalk matchup for the Braves. This is a highly ranked prospect, one of the key pieces in the Soto deal, who has clearly taken a step forward this year. But still, just betting on the Braves talent makes a lot of sense here. For the Nats, sort of the opposite. You don't really have any talent to bank on whatsoever, but Schuster has been really, really bad, and the Nats are really cheap. So from that angle, middle of the pack in terms of top stack percentage at 3%, but about a 7% chance of being top value is, I think, top 5 on the slate.
Okay. And how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Braves 1, Nats 2, Gore 3, Schuster. I guess Gore 3, Schuster 4. You could say Schuster 4, Schuster 3, Gore 4, since Schuster's cheaper. I don't really. Kind of depends like how you're looking at it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Let's take a brief look at BetPro. Adam, have you still been doing BetPro videos for us?
Yes.
Yeah. So check out BetPro if you haven't already, and you can watch Adam's videos for some of the bets on BetPro. BetPro is, of course, just $24.95 for your first 30 days. That is your introductory trial month. You can get it for $24.95 for your first 30 days. Then it recurs at $29.95 weekly or $99.95 monthly. So that's kind of a hefty discount for your first month if you want to check out BetPro for both NBA and MLB. I just put it on the screen. Of course, it's Stokastic's top-ranked DFS pros have made millions of dollars in DFS contests using Stokastic's DFS projections. BetPro gives you access to those projections. You can use them against the books on BetPro, and as you can see on the screen, you can easily find some of the best bets on the board, the bets that have the best odds of winning. You can see the win percentage. You can see the expected value. You can see how much we would suggest putting on the bet. All that is available in BetPro, and you can look at what I'm seeing here is just best bets across all books. You can also, if you're playing on just 1 or 2 different books, you can single out those books, just see what the best bets are there. So really cool tool, very powerful. Check it out if you have not already. We have one game left to talk about, Adam, and that is Oakland at Milwaukee. Paul Blackburn on the mound for the A's. Julio Teheran on the mound for the Brewers. Any interest in these pitchers?
No. I mean, pitchers against the A's sort of are automatically interesting, but Teheran is somehow still $8,700, and it's just I can't get there. We have him pulling 1% ownership, 7.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. The only thing you can say is that he's facing Oakland. We don't really know what he is at this point. He's very likely not good. He struck out 15% of hitters so far with a 4.84 xFIP. Probably just not getting there. On the other side, Blackburn doesn't really give you strikeout stuff either. Massively negative park shift going into Milwaukee, 5.5 implied run total. I don't see the pitching here.
All right. How about the bats?
Yeah, both sides. Milwaukee is the side you're going to trust more. 5.5 implied run total. Blackburn can be tough. Like when he's on, he keeps the ball on the ground. He has good command. He keeps you off balance. So he can be a very frustrating pitcher to stack against because it's like, all right, this guy's throwing 90 miles an hour. Like, how are you not hitting him? But he locates well. He can be really frustrating. But the margin for error is so small. And then you also have a bad Oakland bullpen behind them. So getting to the Brewers looks good. Nobody in their lineup in their projected lineup is more expensive than 5K either. So, or the 4,800. So they're 5th in top stack percentage at 6%, 7% ownership. They look like a good stack. Oakland, obviously, very far down in terms of top stack percentage because they suck, but they are 1st in top value percentage, and Teheran probably sucks too. So you're getting a positive park shift for Oakland. You're getting a bunch of cheap bats. Ruiz is 3,400. He steals any chance he gets, essentially. Noda's got some pop. Brown can hit. Laureano's got power and speed. they're all really cheap against a pitcher who probably isn't very good. So definitely interested in both sides of hitting here.
Okay. And how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Brewers 1, Athletics 2. I don't even know what to do with these pitchers.
Perfect. All right. Well, we've made it through all of the 11 games on the slate. Adam, if you were just to play 3 stacks in a 3-max contest, which 3 stacks would you go to?
Padres, Rockies. Orioles. Yeah, Padres, Rockies, Orioles.
And we did just get the Padres lineup. Looks like the same as expected, I think. 3 favorite pitchers.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I will go, and yeah, the Padres lineup looks like we expected. I will go. I like Senga if he's only going to be 8% owned. I'll go Bradley, Senga, or Bradley, Senga, Kopech, Miller. Like, I think Miller's the best value pitcher.
Okay.
And I'll probably end up using him a good amount.
All right.
Where you're paying north of 9K, I think it's Bradley, Senga, and Kopech for me.
Sounds good. And then do you have a non-Coors home run pick?
Yeah. I'll take Goldschmidt.
I'm gonna go with the top bats tool once again. Has Rowdy Tellez with a 35% chance of hitting a home run off of Paul Blackburn. Yeah, give me Rowdy Tellez there. All right, we've made it through all of our usual stuff. Adam, do you have anything else? I assume you're done with content for the day. Are you done with content for the day?
Yeah, done with content. Gonna make lineups and then go dog sit my sister's dog.
Beautiful. All right, sounds like a nice Saturday. Yeah, I'm gonna go make some lineups as well. Maybe mow the grass. Thank you guys very much for hanging out with us, watching the video. If you haven't done so, please do like the video. And good luck today. Let's win some money.